Interesting facts, Wax's podcast. Listen to it every Wednesday.
James G with the Wax's podcast, the brand new Wax's podcast jingle. You might recognize the voice of James G from such podcast jingles as the James G podcast jingle, the jazz version. Now, not only does he have a jazz version, if you don't remember that, let me play it for you a little bit. How'd that jazz one go? Let me see if I can put it in here. Something like that.
Wax's podcast, talking mad shit about an interesting fact. Wax's podcast, listen to it every Wednesday.
That wasn't a post-edit, guys. I just did that on the fly. Bam. That was pretty crazy how I did that edit. It wasn't crazy. Crazy is a very strong word. Crazy is when you see an eclipse. One of those kind of eclipses that only happens every once in a while. Crazy is the witnessing the Halley's Comet that happens every 75 years. Crazy, something that doesn't happen often. Crazy is not the way that I just edited that. Crazy. That's a very, very liberal use of the term crazy. Better word would be slightly impressive. Slightly impressive to myself and not to others. Sorry if I'm rambling a little bit today. These are the first words that I've spoken today. Take a little sip of coffee, as you do. I know that I wrote a song about how I really love coffee, but it's becoming, now that I don't do anything like, some of us I think are naturally addicted to stuff. If you have a kid and he bites his nails, he won't stop biting his nails. He picks at his scabs when he gets a cut. I think that these people are the people that are destined to be addicted to cigarettes and alcohol and drugs and things like that. And people that can't really sit still very well. You know what I mean? And when I idle, I just want something. I just want something. So now that urge has been replaced by coffee. It's not like I just started drinking coffee. But now at all times in the day, all times at night, I crave coffee, but I can't have coffee at night. That'll keep me awake, won't it? And nighttime is sleepy time. Daytime is wake time. Nighttime is sleepy time. That's what I've always said. I know a lot of people say that that's wrong, but I say it. And, you see these dudes outside of the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and they're always drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes, but I actually am off the cigarettes too, so I don't know. I tried going to AA meetings before. I don't know if I ever talked about that on the podcast. I gave the old college try to quitting the alcohol a few different times. But the problem with the AA shit was always that I'd go in there and the problems that these people would reveal as they shared were either one of two things. And I'm not disparaging the group. I think it's helpful for some people. Excuse me. Sorry if my voice sounds liquidy. Sorry if you can hear the coffee and saliva whisking together in my mouth like an egg. Isn't that what you do? You whisk an egg? Whisk an egg. Sorry if you hear the coffee and saliva in my mouth whisking together the way you would whisk an egg. The coffee being the yolk and the saliva being the white, and they just whisk and whisk and whisk and and whisk together until they are one. That's what my saliva and this coffee are doing right now. So if you hear my voice and you hear that whisking, or now if you hear That sound that grosses some people out of my coffee/saliva that's now stuck to the roof and base of my mouth and gums and tongue. I apologize. Like I said, it's early in the morning. I'm doing this podcast because I said I would. I said I would podcast, and I'm trying to be more of a man of my word. I digress. Speaking of being a man of my word, I did quit the alcohol. Like I said, that's why I'm a little crazy. Or maybe I was crazier before. I don't know. Or maybe talking into a microphone at 7:49 a.m. To yourself, essentially, but then sending it out to others. Maybe that's the crazy thing. Anyway, these one of two things. A, which is the most common thing at an AA meeting that bothered me. Bother's a weird word. It's not really accurate, but you see a guy get up there. He's 50 years old. Doesn't matter how old he is. He's 50 years old. Off the sauce a couple years. But his sauce is actually even more than maybe it's even more than just alcohol. Maybe he's cocaine addict, meth user, in and out of jail, lived on the streets many years, arrested for domestic abuse, looks terrible, relaying and relating stories about his life. And when I hear stories of a guy that lived in an alleyway, and I'm not making fun at all, because I know goddamn well that I'm only a few bad decisions away from being right in that alleyway with him. Guy that lives in an alleyway, did a couple too many whatever drugs he's doing, fucking robbed a liquor store, whatever happened. Just people that have been way down deeper into the shit of life than me. The problem being that when I'm in that AA meeting and I see people get up there and talk and they tell stories like this, I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm doing pretty good. You know, everybody's rock bottom is a different rock bottom. So that was the first kind of person or kind of story that I'd hear in an AA meeting that I'd be like, it would make me feel like I don't belong there, and in a weird way make me just think like, oh, I can just continue doing whatever I'm doing. Because I ain't nowhere near as bad as him. The other one would be a guy that's 60, and he would talk about his drinking problem, and then he would say, and today I celebrate 46 years of sobriety. And then you're like, wait a second, you do the math. You're like, and he's like, and when he tells his story, you finally realize, as he reveals, relays, and relates his story, that he quit drinking at 16. You know, he had some problems when he was in his teenage years, and now he's 60. But he's been going to AA every day for 44 years. Whatever, I just fucked up the math, but you know what I'm saying. And you'd be surprised, there's a lot of people that get up there and share at AA meetings that are older people that, you know, had an epiphany or hit rock bottom when they're 17, 18, and they're still at the meeting. And you know, whatever works for you. But at that point, it's just like a weird religion. You know what I mean? Because the whole tenet, the main tenet of Alcoholics Anonymous is that you give up. You don't have control over yourself. You give up yourself to what you perceive to be God. Whether that's actually, I mean, it could be Jesus. It could be Muhammad, Buddha. I mean, whatever it is, you know, I don't know. Or it could just be like the universe or a higher power as you see fit, you know, like however you determine it to be. But that's the main tenet, is that you are not strong enough to have power over yourself. So it's essentially, to some people like that, it's kind of religious. And going every day just becomes something that people do just the same way that people go to church every week. I didn't plan on talking about this today. Like I said, this is the first thing I've talked about. Isn't it interesting how words become other words? Speaking of relaying and relating. I was talking about coffee, then somehow I ended up talking about AA, which makes sense if you've ever been to an AA meeting. Coffee is very, very popular there, as well as cigarettes. It kind of sucks that, again, most of you probably have never been to an AA meeting and don't give a shit, but like an interesting... If you took the percentage of the American population that smokes cigarettes, I wonder what that is. Let me, as EOM used to say, let me ask my boy Google. Percentage, hold on one second. I'm sorry about this, I'm typing. Of Americans who smoke cigarettes. Wasn't that interesting? What percentage of Americans smoke cigarettes? It's, okay, the only stats that I was able to find are from 2003. This study, blah, 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 for 21% in 2003, but that's down from 22% in 2002. 21.6 in 2003. It was 22.5 in 2002, 22.8 in 2001. So it looks like it's going down, but that's 15 years ago. I bet you it's every year the numbers decrease. It said, I'm looking at this random thing. Who knows what truth there is in this? This is just some idiots talking. Many die. Many are outpriced by the market. Many succumb to peer pressure. Not as many begin the habit. I mean, it's definitely true. Definitely true. It's obviously true. Okay. NBC News. That's, I guess, at least relatively. Okay, so this is I should edit this part of the podcast. Come on, ads. Our NBC News is making me do some bullshit here. What the fuck, dude? I just wanted to see the main thing. NBC News, eh? How about nobody cares? How about that for NBC, huh? Okay, so it basically says that 15% of adults smoke, and that goes to show you if in 2004 it was 22, that it's gone down 7% since then. Whatever it is, my mouth is kind of making all kind of whisking noises. Whatever it is, that number of Americans who smoke cigarettes, 15% it looks to be now, down from 22% in 2003. These are all interesting facts that you learn here on Wax's podcast. That's why, that's the look at me saying interesting facts without even realizing that I'm reciting the words to the theme song. Anyway, 15% in 2003. 15%. God damn it. I can't think right now. It's too early in the morning. Let me take another sip of this coffee. 15%, down 7% since 2003. But if you go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and ask everybody who smokes, it's at least, it's got to be damn near 100. It's got to be 85% of people at AA smoke cigarettes. And it just kind of sucks because, granted, it's a much less self-destructive behavior and addiction than alcohol or heroin or whatever the people were on before. But it certainly is an unhealthy habit. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've realized more and more how unhealthy cigarettes are, aside from the fact that it gives you cancer and heart disease and stuff like that. Because I've just noticed that especially in the last year, I kind of quit smoking for half the year. Then I started back up like an idiot. Then I quit again. And when you smoke and you're taking all these little breaks throughout the day to go outside and do that, while I will say the one great thing about cigarettes is that it makes you go outside a lot. It's nice to take those little breaks. You think of a lot of good ideas when you take a cigarette break. Don't take that as a reason you should smoke, kids. Don't smoke unless you want to come up with some great ideas all the time. If you don't want to come up with great, brilliant ideas and take wonderful, relaxing breaks throughout the day, don't smoke. But for real, all those breaks you take throughout the day somehow add up to you not doing healthy things for that amount of time. Like, when you smoke, you're much less likely to go to the gym, go on a hike, do yoga, things like that. Maybe it's just me. Maybe It's Just Me. Maybe It's Just Me is a good song title for some kind of old crooner song. Maybe you look dazzling. Dazzling. Maybe I am unraveling like something that was made of string. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe you look marvelous. Maybe the universe is wondrous. Maybe I'm... Okay. I really put the knot in Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra. Anyway, like I said, this is the first shit that I'm saying today. The podcast is really coming back with a bang. You're seeing all the different levels of Wax's podcast. You saw the musical one with Davey. You saw the somewhat musical one with Herbal Tea. You saw the regular one last week. And now you're seeing the morning jazz. The morning jazz version of Wax's podcast. When you're driving to work, it sounded like I was about to sing a remix of the old song Diarrhea. When you're driving to work and you feel something squirt, diarrhea. Wax's podcast. When you're driving in your car and you're not going far, Wax's podcast. Wax's podcast. When the traffic is bad but you don't want to be mad or sad, Wax's podcast. Wax's podcast. When it's bumper to bump and your mind is in a slump, Wax's podcast. Wax's podcast. When the boss is really mean, so being late is not not a good idea. Wax's podcast. Yep. That's how you write songs. Everybody that wants to know how to write songs, that's it right there. Wake up, have a cup of coffee, and ramble. That's all this podcast is a bunch of incoherent, semi-coherent rambling. Incoherent is one of those few words where you hear the negative version of the word much more often than you hear the regular version of the word. You don't really hear people say coherent very much, but you hear people say incoherent all the time. He showed up at the scene and he was incoherent. You never really hear people say, he showed up at the scene and he was coherent. He was fine. There was no need to be alarmed. Why did we even show up at the scene? There was no need to show up at the scene. He was totally coherent when we got there. I don't know who called and said he was incoherent. They must have been incoherent themselves. I'm really starting to ramble here. I don't really have anything to say today. I'm so wrapped up in my own bullshit right now. I'm so wrapped up in my mind is wrapped up in all the stuff that I'm doing. It's one constant to-do list of little stupid shit that I do for my life, which is good. It means I'm busy. It means I'm doing a lot of things. It's, the opposite of the idle time is the devil's workshop phrase, which is true. Idle time is the devil's workshop. Life is not easy, man, because you're actually kind of happier when you're busy, but whenever you're real busy, you're just like, why do I do any of this shit? Why can't I just move to a small remote island and just be satisfied? They always talk about if you had to live on a desert island, which CDs would you bring? Why don't we just do that? Why don't I just go to the fucking record store? The record store of yore. I don't know where in this hypothetical desert island I'm going to get a record player or a CD player or a Spotify internet access for Spotify. Maybe that desert island question is going to be like lost on the next generation. And when you say, if you could go to a desert island, if you had to go to a desert island and you had 3 albums, which ones would you bring? First of all, nobody ever really addressed the fact that in that question, how the fuck are they going to play the records? Where are they going to get the electricity from on this desert island? Nobody ever asked that question. I guess in a hypothetical, you don't need to ask questions like that. But the younger generation is just going to be like, what are you talking about? Do they got the internet there? I'll listen to every album of all time. And I'll still know when the new ones come out. I'll still have the new Juice WRLD single queued up on Friday when everything comes out on Spotify. Yeah, that's damn, my mind is just going all over the place. My mind's wandering a little bit, but yeah, why did I start talking about the desert island thing? Oh, because I'm saying, why don't we just go ahead and do that? When somebody says that, when somebody would ask that question to you, which 3 albums would you bring on a desert island? Did you ever think like, nobody ever says like, forget the albums, where's this desert island? Let's go. Where's this hypothetical desert island where I can just sit there and listen to 3 albums and chill out and not have to worry about anything? I think like, I don't know, it's a weird conundrum where we get all of our enjoyment from work. At least I do. I get most of my enjoyment from work. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't enjoy their work at all, and they work all week, and then they really live when they're off work and during the weekends. These are people who either have big social lives or family lives or whatever. A lot of people like me that do more like art jobs are kind of the opposite. They just work all the time. But the conundrum is that we get all this joy from work, but work kind of sucks. But it kind of sucks to work. We'd rather go on vacation. But then you go on vacation, and after a couple of days, you're like, I want to go back to work. Doesn't make sense. It's hard. It's a hard path to navigate. A very difficult, treacherous journey that one takes, where the navigation is very risky, and the navigation is... I don't know what I'm talking about today. Let's do questions and shoutouts. All right, back at you with Wax's podcast. All right. This is an old school Wax's podcast, doing a little rant about nothing, and then doing the questions and shoutouts. This episode's dedicated to the people that used to listen to Wax's podcast. If there's any new listeners, they're probably like, why does anybody listen to this guy? And that's a point well taken. A point that is if I say, what do you think about the podcast? And you say, why would anybody listen to this guy? I say, hey, marked down, jotted down in my list of in my list of notes, folded up piece of paper with that written on it in my suggestion box and taken as a suggestion. Because I don't fucking get it either. Okay. Yo, shout out to James G for the new intro. Shout out to Shiro, Austin P, Lance H, Dumpster Dude 123, Heath in Tampa, Rain, Sean in Philly, Ed from Chicago, A-Def and J-Def, Jackie Sweetleaf, Ryan M the songwriter, Zach S, Brian in Fargo, Justin K from Seattle, Blake, Scarecrow Joe, Tyler A, JL from Texas, Spencer W, Jimmy H, Ben, Dakota R, Zach H, Tiffany B, Luke G. The last two, Tiffany B and Luke G, sounding like a very adorable yet funky hip-hop group / couple. Two rappers from the 80s, Tiffany B and Luke G. Not only do they love each other, they love the mic. They love they love beats and rhymes. Tiffany B. Luke G. Together we live in harmony. Yo, Tiffany B, will you marry me? Oh my God, I love you endlessly. Okay. That's anyway. Take it back to the questions and shoutouts. Where am I at here? Shout out from Jake B from Denver. Jake B from Denver says, I think it's awesome that you made a video shouting everyone out and Push On. That song turned out great with the crowdsourced vocals. Just wanted to say that I love the new acoustic album. Can't wait for it. And I'm stoked the podcast is back. Keep up the good work, dude. I'll see you on tour this fall. I just wanted to give that a quick read. A little bit of love from Jake B from Denver. It made me feel good that he's happy that I'm back on my grind a little bit. Doing more things, y'all. Doing more things. Trying to be more active. Trying to be more. I guess that I'm. Recently, I've realized how blessed I am to be able to do. Recently, been doing this shit forever. But I guess you gotta, in order to be able to do what you love, you got to do a little bit of work, and you got to stop being lazy. And I'm trying to not be lazy. That's why I'm bringing back the podcast, making more content, being more proactive about doing social media and shit like that. And I'm kind of enjoying it, actually. I'm enjoying interacting with people. So that's cool. I appreciate it, Jake B. I got Ed from Chicago. Ed says, I've always wondered about your guitar strap. I've never heard you mention Maiden or anything metal. Is there a story there? Now, Ed from Chicago has been listening to this podcast pretty much since its inception. I've met Ed from Chicago several times in places such as Chicago. An avid concert goer, a music lover. Ed told me that he's actually in a band now, so I'm excited to possibly hear some music from Ed. But I'm more excited that he's doing something that he loves. That's awesome. I get excited when people join bands, because if you're not in a band at least once in your life, you're kind of missing out, dude. Being in a band is a real experience, and it's a real pleasure, a real joy. I was in a band for a long, long time, and it was kind of like a brotherhood, me and my actual brother, and a few of my brothers from other mothers. And it was one of the best times of my life, I must say. It's not just about the music. It's not just about the songwriting. It's not just about the albums and shit that you put out and the shows that you do. It's about the friendship. What's that word? It means brotherhood. That people say that it kind of sounds like Christian. What's that word that people say? It means brotherhood, fellowship. It's about the fellowship. That's what it's about. Okay. It's a bunch of fellows on a ship, just sailing around the United States in a big ass van. The fellowship is an old term. That's before we had cars. Right now, it'd be a fellow van if you're in a band. If you're in a band, it's nice to have it. If you get to the point in a band where you get to tour in a van, then you're really living life, to a certain extent. I know a lot of people, man, you got to really be happy for what you got, because a lot of people don't even get to that point, man. I take a lot of this shit for granted. I'm going on tour this fall, by the way, y'all. I'll have dates soon. I'm going on a tour of the United States this fall. But man, it's a really good experience to tour. It's even just as good. It's actually, in a weird way, it's even just as good of an experience to do a tour where you're at the stage of your musical career where nobody gives a fuck about you, where nobody knows who you are, and it's just you and some of your bros, some of your fellows in that ship driving around. When you get to the town, you don't fucking get greeted by the local promoter and he's like, did you get your stuff? Did you get the food and free drinks that we gave you? Did you get the food? And the free drinks that was on your rider? Is everything cool? Here's all the money. Here's the fucking money because a bunch of people bought tickets to see you. Don't get me wrong, that stuff's amazing. But it's kind of just as, you look back at your life and think about when the good old days were. The good old days were when me and my band drove to Morgantown, West Virginia. And we spent all day. I remember this. It was 420. It was April 20th, and we were doing a 420 show at some bar in Morgantown, West Virginia, which is West Virginia, the big state school, the college town. We spent all fucking day on campus handing out flyers for our show, and it was still empty. I don't think hardly anybody came to that shit. Putting in the work. Grinding. Paying dues. That's definitely part of paying your dues is doing shit like that. And some people get real popular and successful without paying those kinds of dues. But those are the people that usually kind of fizzle out, and then they're in their 20s still, and they're like, damn, what do I do now? Well, if you fall from the top without building a staircase, you fall far to the ground. If you've built that staircase made out of passed out flyers and vans that you bought, and even right after you got the band broke up. My band broke up. I was the guy in the band that got the 15-passenger van, and then I got the band name and the website of the band in a decal across the side of the van. I don't know if other people in the band might have helped pay for it or whatever. We always had a band fund. Instead of like paying, there's 6 people in our band and we get paid $100. So sometimes instead of paying each other out what's 100 divided by 6? That's somewhere around $16 or $17 if my quick math was correct. Instead of getting that huge payday, we'd put it in the band fund and pay for things such as gas in the van. But my point is that as soon as I got that decal on the side of the 15-passenger van that I also drove back and forth to work, that's when the band broke up. Anyway, somehow this had to do with my Iron Maiden strap. Ed was asking about my guitar strap. For years, I've had this Iron Maiden guitar strap. And it's not that crazy of a story. I bought that strap on a tour back in the day. I think what happened, I was somewhere in the middle of the country. And you know what? I want to say it was in Columbus, Ohio, when I did a one-off show there. There was somewhere, I don't think it was a tour. I think it was like a one-off show, because if it was a tour, I would have noticed the first day that I didn't have a guitar strap. I don't know, whatever it was, I went to do the show and I noticed that I didn't have a guitar strap, so I had to go buy one from Guitar Center. And for whatever reason that day, I decided to buy an Iron Maiden strap. They had like a regular, like Guitar Center had like a regular one of those old singer-songwriter design ones that kind of look like a fucking sweater, or like it kind of looked like a design of a shirt a hippie at Woodstock would wear. You know those kind that are of guitar straps? Kind of a lot of folk people used to have those kind of guitar straps. They had that, they had the regular, and then they had the Maiden. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Ed. I'm not a big Iron Maiden fan, and that's what a story I want to relay here. First of all, I'm not a big Iron Maiden fan. I did listen to a pretty good amount of metal when I was young. I listened to a lot of Metallica. My favorite thing that was considered metal was Pantera. I loved Pantera when I was younger, and I think that's because their shit was funky. I like the groovy shit rather than like the super heavy shit. But yeah, when I was young, I did listen to some Metallica. But I never really listened to Iron Maiden. So wearing that Iron Maiden strap is definitely a relatively like poserish thing to do. It's something I would probably make fun of somebody else for doing, you know? Like, you know how like the Ramones, like their t-shirts have become more of a t-shirt brand than a band. You know what I mean? Most people that wear a Ramones t-shirt wouldn't know any Ramones songs. And I think that's something that I've probably made fun of before. But the fact is, I wear an Iron Maiden guitar strap, and I could only name like 2 Iron Maiden songs. And the interesting thing about that is the following. I think Iron Maiden is one of those bands where the name and logo and some of the t-shirts are so cool that a lot of people rock Iron Maiden stuff. I have this strap. This Iron Maiden strap, and every time I go on tour, the sound guy will always be like, Maiden, yeah, Maiden, but he never like quizzes me on it. Like I remember seeing one time, I feel like my boy Term from the Palmer Squares was wearing a Misfits shirt. I feel like the sound guy was like, what songs you like, man? Kind of like, you don't know the Misfits kind of deal. And of course he does. So he wasn't stumped. Term K is kind of a real encyclopedia of music. He's very knowledgeable in music. And he was not stumped. I remember that happening because I remember thinking like, nobody ever does that about my Iron Maiden guitar strap. Nobody ever like challenges me on my Iron Maiden fandom. And I think that's because half of them fucking sound guys are just saying that because, and they don't really know Iron Maiden either. I think Iron Maiden is one of those bands that a lot of people like pretend like they're fans of, and they're not. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I'm pretending to be a fan of Iron Maiden. I do like the way the guitar strap looks, but you know, I'll openly tell anybody like, I don't really know Iron Maiden. I just got the strap that day at Guitar Center. I'm not embarrassed of it. I could just like spend a day researching Iron Maiden and just become a fan, or at least become knowledgeable, just to try to not be a poser with my Iron Maiden strap. But you know what? I'm not going to do that. I will just tell you that I'm a poser with my Iron Maiden strap. I'm open to it, you know? But I just find it interesting that I've never been challenged on it. You know what, Ed, you might be the first one. Ed from Chicago is the first person to kind of challenge me on my Iron Maiden strap, and I appreciate it. Sometimes you got to keep people in check, and that's what Ed is here for. Questioning my metal credentials. And you know what? Those credentials are faulty, and I will openly admit that, Ed. Unless you want to talk about Pantera. I don't even know if Pantera is considered metal like that. You know, they're not in like the Mount Rushmore that is like what, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, Anthrax. Would you put Anthrax is kind of just like lucky to be up there, huh? Anthrax, I mean, you put Maiden up there before Anthrax. Like, you don't really know Anthrax. Anthrax doesn't have classic shit like that, do they? Or there's some metalheads shaking their heads like, oh, you don't know about Anthrax, Blackness in the Hole of My Heart. You don't know about that. That's classic to any metalhead. I don't know. But definitely Metallica. Definitely Slayer. The Mount Rushmore of metal. There's probably newer bands that I don't know about that people are saying to themselves in their head right now. I have no fucking idea. Anyway, thanks, Ed. The other letter I have is from Troy from Texas, and Troy from Texas was saying something really nice. He's a music education major in college, and he sent me a video of him doing his senior class recital, and he did me and Herbal T's song Pay Cut, and I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you for sending me that. That was an old email. That was from this past December. So anybody who sent me emails like last year in 2018, I'm still going through the beatsforwax@gmail.com email address. I am checking the new emails I've been getting in the last week or so, or a month or so. But besides that, I'm still going back to try to get to emails I didn't answer, and one of them was Troy, who for their winter recital this past year they did our song, and I just wanted to say, Troy, I appreciate that. And shit, is that all the fucking letter? I hardly have any letters this week. Sorry, y'all. I've been real busy. That's why I'm doing this podcast on Thursday in the morning, mostly to fulfill my own word, mostly just to tell myself that I tried, mostly just for accountability. I want to be accountable. I want to do what I said I was going to do, and I said I was going to do a podcast. This might be not a great podcast, but you know what? One time, Leonardo da Vinci said that not all this is an exact quote, not all the paintings that I paint are great. Not all the sculptures that I sculpt are classics. But I still paint and I still sculpt. Sometimes I do it on Thursday mornings while drinking coffee. End quote. I can't remember if that was Leonardo da Vinci or Leonardo DiCaprio. Or if it was Leonardo, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. But it was somebody named Leonardo. Are those the most famous Leonardos? Damn, Leonardo is kind of... Nah. I was going to say Leonardo is... Leonardo is hard to say, but in that last sentence that I just said, hard to say was hard to say. Are those the only famous Leonardos, is what I was going to ask. Leonardo, the artist, a.k.a. Da Vinci. Not only an artist, but a creator of many different codes. Leonardo DiCaprio, modern actor. From everything from Titanic to that new Quentin Tarantino movie that I just saw. And Leonardo, the Ninja Turtle, who is both teenage and mutant. I don't know any other Leonardos. There's probably a couple pizza places and Italian restaurants called Leonardo's. What about Leo? I don't know. Those might be the only famous Leonardos. Da Vinci, DiCaprio, and the Turtle. All big fans of pizza, probably. Because I know that I just put together that I always thought it was weird that the Ninja Turtles were fans of pizza. I mean, obviously that invention, I've talked about this before, but the invention of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and their entire world, society, character, the fact that they talk like surfers, but are named after 17th century painters, and they're turtles, but they're also ninjas, and that they love pizza. Obviously, this idea came from some stoner. But I never put together the fact that their love for pizza could possibly be influenced by the fact that their heritage is Italian. I don't even know if that's true. Is Raphael Italian? The painter? I know these are all old painters, but are they all Italian? I think they are. I never saw the episode where they were like, this pizza just isn't like the motherland, though. I think they fully adapted to American pizza. What the fuck am I talking about? All right, y'all. Be safe out there.